Okay, this is Delphina Bailey Nichols, and I'm making a follow-up video for the fifth night of Passover and my 8 nights of Feminist Passover series. And I want to talk about the deliverance of Miriam, the mother of Yeshua. And there are so many books written about Yeshua alone by himself. So I want to try to take a different perspective and just focus on what I remember offhand from my years of previous study. That's off and on. Okay, so we start out where Herod has put out an order to kill all the male children aged 2 and older. Same thing that was going on in the story of Moses. But again, we have to keep in mind that there's multiple other examples in the Bible of pagan kings and also Jewish men in error and rebellion doing the same thing, where they want to kill all the men and kill all the male children and keep somebody else's wealth and money. It's this, we have to understand this was standard practice in the ancient world. We got to understand it was considered normal for a warlord or an emperor or a king to kill all the men in a community and put all the women into harems and polygamy. It was standard practice to take people's money, valuables, livestock, females, whatever they could find. And the ones who were particularly extreme in their man-beast ways, if you're an adult woman, your ass is dead, because they're only going to keep female children who are considered to be still virgins as the only ones still alive. So this is the world that people lived in. And there's still a lot of that going on today, but if you're blessed enough to live in a country like America or England, they're going to be more subtle when they go about doing the old world practice of being worshipped as a god king and murdering the male adults and the male children. Like when children go into child protective services and they're murdered by their foster parents, you're not going to hear about that on the evening news. Instead, you're going to see a bunch of commercials about how all foster parents are heroes and, parents who's on drugs feel victimized by the system, but you're not going to hear one word from all the mothers who's hardworking, responsible, college-educated, good mothers, and they got beat the fuck down financially and socially so their kids could go into foster care and die or be gay raped by a dude if he's a little boy. You're not going to hear from all them women. You turn on TV, you'll say, oh, you got these parents on drugs and they feel victimized and their baby died. And like, well, no, if you're a good mother and you genuinely got victimized, your ass ain't going to be nowhere near camera. Because again, in the more modern nations, the slash and bash God King program, it's more subtle, where they're not going to advertise certain things and it's going to be carried out in private, in a clean, sterilized, administrative manner. Not unless it's something like an adult getting gunned down in the streets. But with the children dying or the mothers dying in foster cares or hospitals, no, you're not going to see that on TV. Where you're from a group that's vastly outnumbered by everybody, and when they're ready to kill your ass or kill the children, of course it's not going to be televised. And there's like 12,000 children that were discovered, Native American children, in the mass graves in Canada. That's not including the Indian children in mass graves here in America. Then there's the 100,000 slaves who were set free and then put in a mass grave called the Devil's Punch Bowl immediately after receiving their freedom. You're not going to hear about all the black children fed to alligators. You're not going to hear about all the kids in modern times who were sold into sex slavery rings, both domestically and overseas, through Child Protective Services. And on the rare occasions, if you do hear about it in the media, they're not gonna circulate the story all that hard. They might report on it for 10 minutes and then hush up real quick. Like what happened when Los Angeles CPS got busted for putting kids on airplanes to ship them overseas for slavery. So with that said, the point I'm trying to make is that the ancient practice of worshiping a king, a president, an emperor, or a sultan, whatever the fuck you want to call him, as a god, and murdering the male children, or just murdering both genders and raping them, this standard practice that is the culture of men. It was the culture of Jewish men who were in rebellion against God and not seeking holiness. You know, when you have a group of men and they have very few or zero higher level miracles that cannot be matched by others, miracles that cannot be duplicated by others. When you have men who don't have that level of power, that right there, what you should learn from the Bible is that that's your first red flag, that they are balls deep in the culture of men, whether they're the perpetrators of the ugliest parts of it, or whether they're a submissive beta male and looking the other way like as if it's not happening and smiling and playing and having fun and making money and pretending like the shit's not happening. So when you have men who have, and you know, and when I say the rare miracles that other cultures, other faiths cannot duplicate, yes, that is the sign that a man or a group of men is not balls deep in the culture of men as perpetrators or beta males, allowing it to continue by passively looking away and having fun and acting like life is all good. And what do I mean by the more rare miracles? Of course, there's the stuff that Yeshua did, you know, like the restoring a lost limbs, you know, body parts that fell off and died, and your so-called healers cannot give them back their lost limbs. Okay, well, Yeshua, he gave lepers back fingers that they lost. Okay, so right there, you know, walking on water, we can't take that as a sign of difference from other nations, because mystics of India walk on water. Commanding nature, we can't really take that as a sign of difference, because there's witches who can do that too. They can communicate with animals, especially if you got, you know, those that do have human spirits in them and those that don't. But when we look at the higher level miracles, like the multiplication of the loaves and fishes, or like restoring the fingers of some lepers that had fell off because of infection. Okay, well, when we look at that stuff right there, okay, then we can see that there's a difference from other faiths and other nations. Then we can see that there's none like Yeshua in all the earth, because these are things we don't see in other faith systems. There's other faiths that can raise the dead to life, walk on water, all that other stuff, but can they do a miracle like the multiplication of the loaves and fishes? No. Can they give you back your limbs, your fingers or your toes or whatever if it falls off? No. You know, so it doesn't have to necessarily be a Moses level miracle in order to look at a man or a group of men and say, oh, okay, well, they have something that nobody else has, so we know they're not balls deep in the culture of men. You know, we know they're not balls deep in the culture of males who are living according to the flesh in the beast kingdom of alpha males and beta males who have a penis. Now, let me see, what else do I want to say? So Miriam Again, the only credit we see given to her is that she gave birth to a special man. We don't really get to know much about how she felt, what she thought. We don't really get to know a whole lot about why she was chosen and what made her different. And this is like a recurring theme where when we look at the 5 women of the 5 deliverances, we see that a lot of times we don't know what sets them apart from other women. We're not allowed to know, okay, well, why is Sarai chosen to come out of Babylon and be the founding mother of Israel? We don't know, okay, why is Yocheved blessed to become the great beauty married to her husband who has a speech impediment, and with her getting bullied over her husband Moses who has a speech impediment because other women want him for his position. We don't know why Yocheved, sorry, not Yocheved, I meant to say Zipporah. Sorry, I said the wrong name. We don't know why Zipporah's chosen for that. We don't know why the prophetess Deborah is chosen to reunite the scattered tribes of Israel as the last divine judge, the only female divine judge to, and also one of the last ones to ride on a white donkey, until Yeshua does it at his crucifixion. With these female characters in the Bible, even Hadassah, we get their story, but we don't really get to see much about why they're different, why they're set apart, what they think and what they feel. Like, at no point in any of these stories written by men are we allowed to have a really good in-depth look at what they think, what they feel, why they were considered different, why they were essential to building up a new thing. Nobody looks at that because in the culture of man, which really has not changed, they just hide it better. Okay, they just hide it better. Like, and when you're dealing with people who are balls deep into the culture of man, they don't fucking care. Your only real value is in your ability to be beautiful enough or popular enough or rich enough and to satisfy a dominant male sexually, or to satisfy him in whatever way he's looking to be satisfied, whether it's money or sex or birthing children. And beyond that, in the culture of man, what you think, what you feel, what you bring to the table, and why God chose you as a woman, nobody fucking cares. And that's apparent in the way most Bible stories are written. And yeah, we do have female pastors today. We have women who are blessed. But do we see that higher level power like what Deborah had as a divine judge and the only female divine judge? Most of the time, no, we don't. But you have a rare few exceptions, like Jennifer Toledo, a Mexican-American woman who was called to travel to Kenya to do some evangelism in Kenya. And in her ministry that attended to orphans, there actually was a miracle like the multiplication of the loaves and fishes, a very rare thing that has not been seen in thousands of years. And it was done for that young girl's ministry when she obeyed the voice of God, packed one bag of clothes, and flew out to the Turkana Desert in Africa and founded an orphanage in Kenya. And when her covenant was made with the Turkana Desert people that she traveled to, lightning struck the top of a mountain and their drought was over. Those people were being tortured by their own spirits from their own ancestors, where because they had reached a point where the land was exhausted, the soil was exhausted, and they were not physically able to pay the spirits that had served their ancestors. And so you'd see situations where the whole family would bleed from the nose, including the animals, because they couldn't afford to pay the spirits that served their ancestors. See, this is the level of bondage that this young Mexican American girl, Jennifer Toledo, was working on when she was sent to travel to the Turkana Desert before founding the orphanage in Kenya. And she was obedient to the first chapter in the book of Isaiah, where it says, I don't desire your sacrifices. You're offending me, trampling my courts with these offerings. I want you to do justice. I want you to judge fairly between one man and another. I want you to plead the cause of widows and look out for orphans and fatherless children. Okay, well, Jennifer Toledo, she just had a very, very Book of Isaiah chapter 1 focused ministry. Okay. She focused very, very hard on that, and that's why in her ministry they did receive the super rare miracle, like the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. Okay, this something we hadn't seen in thousands of years, not even in all the most televised ministries, and the number of people who even know about what she accomplished is very, very tiny. Why? Because she's a female, and because traditionally in the culture of man, the culture of the flesh, what you think, what you bring to the table, what you feel, it plays little or no role in your value to society as a whole. It's not even talked about really, only very, very little, even in biblical stories. Because again, in the world of the flesh, your only value as a female is your physical appearance, your income, your social status, which is already going to be very, very low if you're not heavily white mixed like Jennifer Toledo was, or pure Caucasian. You're automatically going to take some losses in the status department. You got to have pretty privilege. You got to have pretty privilege and be considered above average in beauty or popularity money, whatever. And and as a female, if you don't have those things, and if you're not tied to a man, serving him in whatever way, temporarily or long term, you're just, like, people are just looking at you like, why the fuck are you here? Now, can you imagine if she had done a massive scale miracle of the loaves and the fishes here in America, and if she was tied to a male leader over a huge congregation, and if it was the man doing it and not her? Could you, and especially if it was a man with status, with money, could you imagine how much more that would have been televised to have such a rare and special privilege? And the miracle that Jennifer Toledo had, it's a legacy not only of Yeshua, but also of his mother, who was chosen for whatever reasons we don't know, due to the devaluation of females. But Yeshua's legacy, a big part of that is due to his mother, because she put in the work of helping to shape and mold him as a person, helping him to grow physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I think it's a shame that the first person to do a large-scale loaves and fishes type miracle in modern times, Jennifer Toledo, and very, very few people in this world, almost nobody knows about it because she's female. And at the time when she did this, I don't even think she was married. I think this is before she met her husband, Jonathan, that she did all this stuff. Now, so it's kind of obvious where gender kind of worked against her, but she was able to get at least some publicity on a slightly higher level because, she's a woman of non-color. If she wasn't a woman of non-color, maybe it's possible that there would have never been even the small amount of publicity that she did get from her rare privilege of doing such a special thing that other pastors have not and cannot do. Have not done and cannot do is what I meant to say. So we have a modern example of what one woman's obedience, what one woman's strong Book of Isaiah chapter 1 ministry can do. And now going back to the story of Miriam, where we really don't know a whole lot about her. She was blessed in that angels appeared so that and spoke to her husband so he would not abandon her and leave her for dead. That was her first deliverance. Her second deliverance was, again, in the culture of man, the culture of mass murdering the males and picking and choosing which females to live alive. We still have that. It's just neater, more organized, more hidden, and more sterilized if you're not in a third world country. We still have that. And Miriam's second deliverance is that she's spared from that, and her husband evacuates her out of the country, and she's able to save the life of her newborn baby boy. When he's about to become a victim of the very, very common culture of man that did not go away, where you selectively murder, selectively murder women and mass murder men and choose females you want to keep alive so they can share you. We still have a lot of that, and including like the 12,000 Native American children in mass graves in Canada, not including the Indian kids in mass graves here in America, and the 100,000 emancipated slaves in the Devil's Punch Bowl who were thrown in there immediately after receiving their freedom. There's the black children who was fed to alligators, and the people who did it, they're still alive. The people who did these types of things, the people who are still doing it through Child Protective Services, still selling children into slavery through Child Protective Services, still selling children to pharmaceutical companies to have medications tested on them through Child Protective Services. The people who are still supporting the culture of man, where you murder the men, murder the children, and selectively choose which females to leave alive or to go free, the people still doing that shit, most of them, they're nowhere near a jail and not going to be anywhere near no level of judgment unless God gets involved. They're not going to see no justice of any kind, because that is the essence of what it means to be a colonized person, where, yes, you can be somebody's friend and neighbor, and maybe you can be okay if they know you personally. But what about when they don't know you? What about when somebody comes to them with just any old excuse? And then, like the husband of Queen Esther, they're like, oh yeah, sure, do whatever you want to do. Yeah, you're okay. I'm not even going to look into it. And boom, right there. That's your life. Your life destroyed or destabilized or ended. Because they don't have, there could be mountains of proof and people will still fuck your life up and take your kids and walk away with a smile feeling like they've done a great contribution to society. That's part of the culture of man. It's not new. This is something everyone has done, and part of pursuing the culture, pursuing the relationship with the Hebrew God or the true creator, part of it involves trying to work toward a separation from that way of life. And when you make the real connection with the true creator, when you make the real connection with the Hebrew God, then he will do things that other people cannot copy it, they cannot duplicate it, and there will be a clear difference. And if you look at the scriptures that I quote in the video about the deliverance of Zipporah, the wife of Moses, okay, well, right there in the book of Exodus, he says, all these great plagues that I'm about to bring upon you, I'm about to do this so that you will know that there are none like me in the entire earth. He did things that the so-called fucking aliens have never done on a massive scale. He did things that witches have never done on a massive scale. He's even done things that we've never seen them do on a smaller scale. Why? It's so that we can know that there is none like him in the entire world, spiritually or physically, or even technologically. When you look at the description of heaven in the book of Revelation, I believe it says that heaven is either clear like made of gold that's clear like glass, or it has streets that's made of gold that's clear like glass. It says one or the other. And when you purify gold down to the nanoscale level, it looks clear like glass. And man has only had the technology to do that for like maybe 10 or 15 years now. We haven't had the technology that long, but yet we have this book from thousands of years ago talking about heaven has gold that's clear like glass, gold purified down to the nanoscale level. Like when you look at images of quantum computers that researchers are building right now, even the quantum computers are not made of gold that looks clear like glass. You look at the quantum computers that they're building right now, and it's made of gold that just looks like the regular gold on your jewelry. That's it. It's not even the pure stuff being used in quantum computing. So, with that said, there's a spiritual part. There's a social, psychological component to the real thing. And there's also a technological component to the real thing where certain things are done on a massive scale or a small scale. So you can look at that and say, oh, okay, there are none like this one in all the earth. Or you can look at it and say, oh, okay, well, this group of people, they're balls deep in the culture of man because we don't see them receiving the higher level miracles for protection. We don't see them receiving the higher level miracles for deliverance. So right then you could say, okay, they must be either the culprits and the perpetrators of the slash and bash culture of man, or they're the beta males who's just looking the other way and pretending every life is all roses and daisies while it's happening in front of them. And I'm not saying I have all the answers, and I'm not saying I have everything together, because certain things, spiritual things that I have seen and experienced since childhood never, ever went away. Instead, it just got worse and worse over time. And even when I was a devout Christian in the white evangelical culture and going to church 2-3 times a week, I did not see a difference or an improvement in the types of spiritual activity I had experienced since a child. There was still the steady, gradual progression toward it getting worse, even when I was married to an African guy and when in the white evangelical culture. And because I was not seeing a higher level of basic spiritual security and protection, not even in the prophetic churches, I started doing research trying to figure out, okay, well, why am I not seeing better quality spiritual protection even in the prophetic churches? Why was I not seeing that in the traditional white evangelical churches? And and I did a lot of research I looked at biblical history, I looked at scripture, I looked at alchemy, I looked at world religions to try to gain an understanding of what certain things are, where it came about, what's the history, how does it work. I did a lot of study on a lot of different things for a long time, and through trial and error, I gained a wider perspective on what's going on and why it can be extremely dangerous and extremely problematic. But did I get a full resolution to my security problem from dealing with pagans? No, that didn't work either. So, and then recently, dealing with the pagans, that got me no results in seeking higher level security. And one lady who has a channel called Eve the Medium, she was saying that even with her as a high priestess, sometimes she has to wake up out of her sleep at night to put on anointing oil or to put cascarilla on her hands and the back of her neck or things like that because, stuff doesn't really get blocked out of her home all that well when it's another high priestess or witch or whatever person trying to throw a spiritual attack. So even with her as a high priestess, she doesn't have airtight security, not even as she's laying on her bed to sleep. And so what I was trying to figure out is, okay, well, why is it that the high priestesses are not seeing the higher level security that everybody thinks they have? Why are the traditional white evangelical Christians also not having that higher level airtight security that everybody thinks they have? And really they don't. Because although they have power, they have miracles, we don't see them, like 99.99% of them, we don't see them doing anything that cannot be duplicated or copied by a pagan. Okay. And that includes walking on water. We don't see them doing the more rare stuff like restoring lost limbs, like what Yeshua did. We don't see them doing the multiplication of the loaves and fishes type of miracles like Jennifer Toledo did when she was called to go to the Turkana Desert as an evangelist. It's a lot that we just don't see anymore. And what's the real reason? Why? And if you're in a church or in a social group or a coven, you don't have the freedom to ask questions that other people would find offensive. You don't have, whether you're dealing with pagans or dealing with Christians, if you're in a group, you have a lot less freedom to try to look into, okay, well, why is this problem there? How did that come about? What's the real way to fix that? You can't do it. If you do that with the pagans, because they're not as open-minded as you think. You point out basic stuff to them, especially if it's related to environmental conservation and population control. Oh, right there, instant attitude. You on block mode. You can't come to pagans like, why are we doing this? Why are we still choosing those types of people as mates? Why are we doing XYZ? Look at these bad results. Can you come to them like that? No. Can you come to a Muslim like that? No. Can you come to a white evangelical Christian like that? In most cases, no. So the silver lining in being alone is that you can do troubleshooting. that actually might turn out to be kind of dangerous, but you can troubleshoot to try to figure out, okay, well, what specifically am I doing and why specifically is it not working? And I had an experience recently where I got an email from Israel 365, and I do have some ancestry that is Hebrew, and I have the same rare blood type as a lot of the high priests in Judaism. And I got an email from them about the types of Thanksgiving offerings that poor people can offer to God that does not have to be given in the temple. I got an email about types of offerings that are acceptable to give outside of the temple if when you're poor and you've survived traumas. So I tried doing the poor person's offering that is permitted outside the temple in Jerusalem. And literally within the first 10 minutes, my phone was ringing. And some problems with my ex-husband or another individual abusing my finances, it was being reported to me within the first 10 minutes. Stuff related to financial issues was getting revealed, things I didn't have a chance to pick up on during the 7 years that I was homeless and not having my own home after leaving my ex-husband. So I saw a financial blessing and an end to a fraud within my first 10 minutes after giving the Thanksgiving offering of a poor person surviving traumas. And so that's when I started thinking, okay, well, white evangelical Christianity, it didn't really work out for me. It didn't give me the level of breakthrough and protection I was looking for because I'm not a foreign convert. I'm mixed with that actual bloodline and I have their rare blood type. So after the experience I had recently with having a financial breakthrough, of having fraud on my credit reported in the first 10 minutes of me giving the poor person's offering that's allowed without a temple, I thought, okay, well, maybe I need to look up on other policies that's required from people from my bloodline, and maybe I need to try to mitigate that. And then maybe I might see the breakthroughs that I've been needing for a long time. Maybe I might see the healings that I've been hoping for. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, because a lot of people who are foreign converts in the church, they'll say, "Oh, you don't have to observe any of that Hebrew stuff." Okay, well, by law, they're not required to observe any of it because they're not from the bloodline. They're just a part of things spiritually. And for me personally, I saw a very fast breakthrough from doing just a tiny bit of the part required by Hebrews. Because I'm not a foreign convert, and I know there are a lot of people in white evangelical church culture, they'll swear up and down that I'm wrong, but the Old Testament clearly states that people who are just only spiritually connected, they're not required to do Passover. They're not required to, not only are they not required to do it, but it's also forbidden for them to participate. So they don't have to do certain things if they don't want to. And for me personally, I'm trying to figure out what's the real reason why I have not been seeing a specific level of communication that I've been hoping for, a specific level of breakthrough, and I'm trying to mitigate that. And I've kind of had some success mixed with failure. Like I even made my own type of messianic mezuzah. And my messianic type mezuzah, it was a huge failure. It was a massive failure. It like one line in my mezuzah, I had accidentally copied it backwards, I think, and there was some other stuff wrong. So, I think that may have brought problems into my life, having mezuzahs that were grammatically a little bit backwards in certain points or flawed. So I'm adding and subtracting different things and doing diagnostics, trying to figure out, okay, well, what's really gonna work best for me? What do I need to subtract out? What should I be adding in order to see the higher level communications and breakthroughs that I've been hoping for? And so